Rock Jocks does not express the views of any Mountain West Conference members or their affiliates.
If you smell what the Rock is cooking.
So, yeah. Sorry, UNLV. Turns out you can make football exciting. This, our Juggernaut Game of the Week, and so much more on this episode of Rock Jocks.
All right, Mountain West Conference fans, welcome to another episode of Rock Jocks from the Front Row Network. We're your hosts. I'm Preston Crosha.
I'm Steve Schwartzman.
We have a special guest today. Introduce yourself, special guest.
How's it going, Mountain West? This is Kyle Haywood.
Kyle Haywood. He joins us from another USU Front Row Network podcast called Junkies. And he's here to break down some stuff, put in his 2 cents on just about everything we're going to talk about this week. But let's run down the plan really quickly. What do we have, Steve?
Well, we're going to take a trip around the Mountain West. We're going to break down a couple of our big games from this week, eat a little bit of crow after the UNLV CMU comments we made last week. We're going to talk about who's the peak. We're going to have a debate about who has the most explosive offense in the conference, run the hurry up, do some Goliath alerts, talk about our game of the week, play some Ask the Jocks, and then talk about what we learned. But before we get started with all that, we wanted to take a second and address something that happened within the boundary of our conference and also with a school that actually is playing a lot of teams in our conference this year. We wanted to take a second and talk about the situation that's going on out in Boulder, Colorado. CU Boulder is a very respectable program. They're rivals of several of our teams, namely Colorado State. They were scheduled this week to play Fresno. And unfortunately, tragedy struck out in Boulder, and there was inclement weather, lots of floods, lots of damage happening up on the CU Boulder campus throughout the city. Many lost lives, lots of people unaccounted for. If you know me, Steve Schwartzman, I'm a big guy. I love to travel. I love to get around the country, and one of my favorite cities in the entire United States is Boulder, Colorado. If you've never been to Boulder, it's a beautiful city. It's nestled right there in the middle of Colorado and the beautiful mountains, but it's full of life. If you ever get out to Boulder, you get out to Pearl Street. There's so much fun. It has this really, really cool ambiance to it. Great people. It's just a great city and a really cool campus up at CU Boulder. And for it's always hard when you see a city like that go through a situation like this. And we just wanted to send our heartfelt thoughts, prayers, and support out to the residents out in Boulder, any of the Buffaloes out at the CU Boulder campus, and anyone at any of the schools in the conference, and anyone really affected by this event. We want to just send our heartfelt condolences and our support. Anything you can do to send your support for this and anything else going on, of course, we're big advocates of that. I'm sure there are tons of funds going up on the line, any efforts that you want to try and kind of rebuild the city with what they've gone through. But we just wanted to send our heartfelt condolences and our support. We love you, CU. We hope you get back on your feet, and we're excited to see where we go from here. So there's our thoughts and prayers.
Just real quick, I just wanted to give a shout out to Fresno State with the way that they handled the situation with Colorado. It's kind of a hard situation when you game plan, you prepare all week to go and play a team, and then that game falls through. Yeah. It messes with your mind. It messes with your training. Now they've got, now they didn't play a game that they were all psyched up for, and now they've got to prepare again for another big game against Boise State this week. But instead of getting all upset and really taking this negatively, they actually of the online donations that you were talking about, Steve, Fresno State is actually accepting donations to help the relief efforts in Boulder. So just a shout out to all you Mountain West fans out there. If you're looking for a way to help out and really show what the Mountain West is about, go ahead and donate to that Fresno State relief fund to help those victims out in Boulder. I think that's definitely that's just a classy move by Fresno State.
Huge tip of the hat to Fresno for that.
Absolutely.
Way to go.
And we will tweet out a link to where you can go to Fresno State's website and actually donate to the rescue efforts out in Boulder through them. So like Steve and Kyle said, our hearts and prayers go out to those guys. And good shout out, guys. That was very heartfelt. Now let's step into something just a little bit less important, but we still love to talk about it. Football. All right, so let's just go around the conference really quick on how this week went, shall we?
Absolutely. Air Force plays tough but loses big to Boise State.
UNLV comes back in a big win over the Chippewas of Central Michigan.
New Mexico heads out to Pittsburgh but can't handle the Panthers.
Nevada just has a really hard time against the Seminoles of Florida State.
Colorado State finds some look and puts their beat down on Cal Poly, doubling their score.
Utah State puts a hurt on Weber State.
Celebrate if you're a Cowboy. Wyoming wins big against Northern Colorado.
All right, so those are the results from this past week, but specifically we wanted to talk about two big games that we had this past week. What are you smiling about, Steve?
Just you know why. So we made a comment last week about a specific game on the schedule.
I was waiting when this was going to come up.
That we weren't
we weren't too excited, let's just say that much.
Rebel fans, we're sorry. We never questioned UNLV's ability to play against CMU. We just specifically said, of all the games, this is probably going to be the most boring. I think we even made a comment about go ahead and put it on your TV if you want to go to bed.
Yeah,
play it as ambiance as you're falling asleep.
I said that. And so we will have to take those comments back. And honestly, this turned out to be quite the game now, didn't it, Steve?
Oh, absolutely exciting. As a matter of fact, this was UNLV. They tied for their largest comeback win in the history of their football program.
That's awesome.
Down 0-21 in the second quarter, able to come back, score 31 straight points. Tied coming into the fourth. Huge job. I know you have all kinds of things to say about their offensive performance. You know, it started off as a big dud, but they came strong, and it ended up being a great game.
Absolutely. I look at this team, and this was really a tale of two halves. The first quarter was just terrible, and we tweeted out on our Twitter account, UNLV is just sad. You know?
I called them garbage on my Twitter account. It was awful. They started terribly.
It was bad. It was super bad. And then we get to a point where you're looking at that score and you think, wait, what just happened? This game started out with Nick Sherry throwing an interception. He throws one pass in this game, and it gets intercepted by the Chippewas. They just couldn't do anything for the first quarter, and really most of the second quarter. They did not score until 54 seconds left in the half. But they put in a guy named Caleb Herring, and I'll tell you what, did he do some things. He went 24 for 28, 266 yards, and 3 touchdowns. No interceptions. The quarterback rating of 90.0. That is phenomenal. A phenomenal game. I think that they outplayed Central Michigan in all phases of the game. They had
at least in the second half.
Yeah, at least in the second half, right? And I think that they were well coached. There was a couple of trick plays that Bobby Houck had up his sleeve, pulled him out, and they were able to convert on those plays. And as well, with Caleb Herring throwing the ball, you look at Tim Cornette, ran the ball very well, 22 carries for 94 yards. And then Devontae Davis, man. He had 7 receptions, 140 yards. That's 140 yards, a long of 50, and 3 touchdowns. So all of those touchdown passes from Caleb Herring went to Devontae Davis.
Absolutely. And nothing you give it to Tim Cornette, just to kick back over to him. 94 yards. He scored a touchdown to get him within 7 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter. That was such a big momentum getter. That game put him 3rd all-time on UNLV's rushing list. We've talked a lot about some players, and we've talked about how some of our running backs have played under their potential, and I think Tim Cornette's one of those players. Hopefully this opens his eyes to some bigger possibilities. Hard to say that, because we may have a very effective 1-2 punch if UNLV can keep this Herring-Devontae Davis connection going. But when I think of this game, and I'm curious what your thoughts, Kyle, you can even chime in, just Your thoughts on what this type of a win does for a team? I want to just kick back to a game that Utah State had a couple years ago against Hawaii when they were on the road at Hawaii. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they were down 28-7 heading into the half.
Yeah.
Chucky Keaton had just gotten injured. They put in a backup and had a roaring comeback to win. And essentially it turned Utah State's football program around. And I'm not saying that necessarily here for UNLV, but I look at this and I go, maybe this is something that instills enough confidence for them to really become a strong voice in the West Division.
Yeah, you look at this performance, and it really could be a turning point just in momentum and confidence. I think that finding that you have a great quarterback in Herring and building that confidence for him to throw the ball is phenomenal for the program. As well as, if we're going to talk about the whole team performance, we obviously have to talk defense. You look at Penny Vea and Frank Crawford, each had interceptions. And I know that you and I, when we were breaking down UNLV before this season, we were talking about their defensive backs.
Yep.
And how they weren't making good plays.
Smart defense,
Yeah.
and they haven't been able to do it up until now.
But this game, if you look at their numbers and how well they were able to shut down the pass in the second half against Central Michigan, they did a phenomenal job. They held the Chippewas, which I really just like saying that, if you haven't noticed.
Absolutely. They're just a summer camp all year long.
They held their quarterback, Cooper Rush, which is a pretty cool name.
That's
Rush.
So we have Carrier, Rush, and
rushing.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Well, that's Central Michigan, so we can't
Fantastic.
fall in love with this guy quite yet. But Cooper Rush, his completion percentage was at 50%. His QB rating was only 40.7. So you look at that defensive backfield for UNLV, and they were able to really shut him down. So this, back to your question, I guess I should actually answer your question. This really could turn the UNLV program around. I think that they are looking to be a dark horse in the West Division. What do you think about the Rebels, Kyle?
You know what? It's funny that you brought that up, because to be honest, I mean, I thought that the West Division. Let me just go back to my breakdown of the divisions. When I looked at the West Division at the start of the year, I mean, Fresno State has kind of been the favorite all along, but I really thought that San Jose State, San Diego State, I mean, possibly Nevada could come in and make some noise. I mean, I thought that was just the top of the West Division was so loaded. And then in the Mountain Division, I felt like it's basically probably going to come down between Boise State and Utah State. Was my initial thought. But so much has happened over the first 3 weeks of the season that, I mean, I'm looking at Wyoming as a potential Mountain champion. But going back to the West Division and UNLV, I think that a game that like the one that UNLV just had could easily project them from, a preseason 5 or 6 team all the way up to a second place in the West Division. I think it's that type of a game, and I think that who knows? I mean, this could be the start of some serious momentum for the Rebels to come in, surprise somebody.
Yeah, I don't want to say that we're all lollipops and rainbows with the Rebels just quite yet. They have to prove themselves.
Oh, definitely.
With some more games, but if they're able to maintain this momentum, they could do some great things. We'll see where they go from here.
And who knows if that's going to benefit San Jose State down the road. If this UNLV team, who knows if they're going to upset one of those quote unquote leaders for the West Division. It could be interesting. It's going to be. I think that a lot more teams are starting to open their eyes and pay some more attention to UNLV now.
Absolutely, and I think, honestly, in my opinion, you look at their schedule, and I think they have a chance to build something decent. I think that the way their conference schedule is built, they're not slammed with huge teams one after the others, so there's a chance for them to build some momentum. They play Western Illinois next week. I don't see that being too hard of a challenge for them. You look at SDSU and their demise, in all honesty, what else do you call it? You look at Nevada and their injuries. To me, UNLV, honestly, to be bold, is a lock for that third spot. And I'm not saying, I mean, they've got San Jose State near the end of the year. It's hard to say that they have a shot. Let's see. They actually host San Jose State, so who knows what could happen there. I don't necessarily see them going to Fresno and winning, but who knows where they could go from there. But I definitely see them as an easy third pick lock, a potential solid bowl team. Hopefully this is the win that turns that team around. And this is a team we haven't talked a ton about all year. And I'd like to talk about them a bit more. It might shed some light because we've had a couple teams that have been underwhelming. Let's be real. And This is that team that could shed some really good light on this conference.
Awesome. Well, I think that we thoroughly covered that game. And once again, we apologize, Rebels fans. You have changed our minds. Let's get to...
Hey, Preston, you got a little something on your lip.
Oh, I do?
I think it's a crow feather.
Oh, it's a crow feather. Oh.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Look at our special guest throwing some crap. All right.
What a guy.
Well, let's get to the lone conference game this week. Air Force went to Boise this week, and we had a guy that's sitting right here with us up at that game, and we just want to kind of throw the microphone over to him and let him go on the whole experience.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, I love college football. I love it. Doesn't matter who's playing. I want to watch. I had an opportunity kind of last second. It was actually Thursday afternoon that I found out that, hey, Friday morning I'm making a trip up to Boise with my wife, and I'm going to go to that game. So scrounged up a couple tickets for us to go, and we made the trip. We left way early on Friday morning, headed out. Got there, and we were done pretty early with everything that we were going to be doing, and we headed over to the stadium, and I just took in the full experience. I wanted to go see what these two fan bases were about. I haven't had a whole lot of experience with Air Force fans. I've had a little bit more with Boise State fans, and so I had a chance to go in and just kind of see what this was like, and I got to say that in the state of Idaho, Boise State football has got to be the thing, and it's pretty awesome to see that this football team doesn't compete with an NBA team. It doesn't compete with an NFL team or a Major League Soccer or baseball team. They are it, and you can tell the fans are so passionate about their team. And I just went walking up and down every row of this tailgate. And I talked to Boise State fans, I talked to Air Force fans, and I got to say that I had a blast. I had an incredible time. I was kind of wearing, some neutral colors. I didn't want to offend anybody, and I told everybody who I was. But a lot of them saw me just walking by and said, "Well, who are you? What are you doing here?" and invited me up. And we just talked football. We talked about sports. We talked about Boise State. We talked about Air Force. And it was great. I mean, just the overall experience. And then just going into game time, the buildup was huge. And I think that there was, we started off the show today talking about how Fresno State has really kind of supported Colorado. Colorado, it was just a game on their schedule, but now they've turned it into, hey, let's really help these people out. And the respect that was shown by Fresno State to Colorado is incredible. But I think that the same respect, while a healthy bit of trash talk is always good, the same respect was shown between Boise State and Air Force fans, at least in my experience. Granted, I wasn't on either side of the fence, so I might not have been, in the heat of the battle. But from what I could see and what I could tell, it was fantastic. Boise State puts on they put on a good show to build things up.
I like it. Now, is this just as a question, including bowl games, how many times have you been to Bronco Stadium for a football game?
This was my first time.
This was your first?
Oh, no, second time, including bowl games. I went to the Potato Bowl last year.
Okay, so you'd been to a Potato Bowl, so you've been to two. So are you a fan of the blue?
You know what? On TV, I'm not, but in real life, when you're at the stadium, there's not a more iconic field. I mean, and I think that goes without saying. I think there's not a more iconic field. I mean, you have Notre Dame that's just classic, and you have some of these big time fields, but it's blue. It's so eye popping, and I'm a fan. In real life, I'm a fan. Watching on TV hurts my eyes.
That's exactly what I said. That's exactly what I said.
I'll take that. I have made my opinion on the blue very
We
loud.
know what your opinion is, Steve.
I will say this about Bronco, and what I like about the stadium is I've been there for 2 bowl games, and something about how it's put together, the acoustics, the mountains, I don't know what it is. That's a loud stadium. That can
It
get
is.
loud quick, even with just a couple hundred people. And that's got to make for such a fun atmosphere with some crazy. And it's just like you said, those Boise fans, that's religion and life for them. That's not just, I mean, that's what they have. That they have potato harvest. They have, gosh, there's got to be
Nice
something.
like I
else.
said, there's not.
They have the
a whole lot
humanitarian museum, and then from there it's Napoleon Dynamite. It's like whatever you got. And look, Idaho's a fun place, and I'm not
what?
trying to knock it, but
yeah, and I love the state of Idaho. I've got a bunch of family from there.
Yeah.
Please do not take this as a negative thing. I think what Steve and I are trying to say is that there's not a lot competing for this attention, and so when you go to this, it's huge.
and I'm going to be bold and say it's an atmosphere you get, like, if you go over to Alabama, it's the same idea. There is no professional sports team that takes up real estate there. So when you move to Alabama, you are Roll Tide or War Eagle. It's Auburn, it's Alabama. That runs the state. And I think Boise State football is beginning to really, really run the state there, and it's fun to watch. It sounds like a great atmosphere, and it sounds pretty exciting.
Oh, definitely. I mean, everything from the player intros to the music at the beginning to they had a cowgirl actually riding a bronco, or I'm not a super suave when it comes to all the equestrian lingo, but it was a horse, and so I'm just gonna call it a bronco. She was riding it, as the team came out of the tunnel and everything. But the team comes out of the tunnel. First of all, and they run the whole length of the field, and they go down to the opposite end zone, and they kneel down in front of their fans. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know if it's a tradition or what, but I thought that was a cool thing to see. They run out and they go kneel down in front of their fans. I don't know if it's a prayer or whatever it is that they're doing, but it was awesome.
That is sweet.
Oh yeah, and it was just a really cool game to go to. I mean, let's cut to the chase though. Game breakdown. There was an incredible offensive performance put out there. Frankly, by I think both teams. I think both teams went out and offensively established themselves. It was quite a ways into the game before we saw a punt. In fact, I'm almost positive. I haven't checked, but I don't remember a punt happening in the first half.
Yeah,
That's impressive.
Let me just check this, but the first punt of the game was Air Force punting the ball in the third quarter.
Oh,
All right, so-
wow.
All
yeah.
right.
So that was well into the third quarter. That was 11 minutes into the third quarter. So these teams were, at each other back and forth. I think so. You talk about the offensive prowess of these two teams, but Kyle, do you think that it was more of an example of Boise State's defense underperforming in the first half, missing some tackles, not being fundamentally sound, or was it just the triple option working to a T?
I think you guys have covered this before in previous episodes about Air Force's offense and how hard that is to really decipher. And very few teams have been successful in just really going in and shutting down an Air Force offense. The thing that I was impressed with is, what was the halftime score? 17-14?
Yeah.
17.
Oh,
17.
17.
No. Yeah, 17-21.
17-21, and I think Boise State scored right before the half. But up to that point, it was 17-14 until right before the half, and there wasn't a punt. That's not very many drives happening. The Air Force offense chewed up the clock like crazy.
Absolutely. Such a well-coached team. And I have to give a lot of props to Jaleel Weaney for his ability to work a very sound running game. I think he showed what he can do with his potential.
As a freshman,
Yeah.
I think that the future is really bright for this kid. You look at their numbers. I mean, I'm a big numbers guy. They had 287 yards total, but their time of possession was 29 minutes. So they only lost
That's almost dead even with
Boise State, which is amazing. They're not trying to just slam the ball down your throat really fast. they're trying to do it kind of slow, I guess. Yeah. But because it's the same thing over and over, the triple option, but it works. And if you can eat up that clock, you give your team just as much chance to win as anybody. So I think this game was well played. It kind of got away from Air Force late in the game, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
And I was gonna say this game is so much closer than the score gives. If you take a look at it, it was very close late, and then Southwick and the Broncos just kind of broke up with it. And
well, I think that I don't know if it was necessarily so much that Southwick stepped up. I think Southwick and the Bronco offense was playing well the entire game. I mean, they didn't punt. They didn't punt. I think that their defense stepped up and started getting some stops on Air Force. They were struggling with that early on. Whatever their coaching was, made some adjustments around halftime, and that's when Air Force really started to struggle moving the ball down the field. So that's a win where the Bronco defense came up and kept that game. They won the second half flat out and made it so that Air Force didn't have a chance to win at the end of that game.
I wouldn't say that they won the second half flat out. I think that they won the fourth quarter. If you look at how the scoring was divided or separated in this game, there was only one score in the third quarter, and that was a Jay Ajayi touchdown run. But in the fourth quarter, early into the last period, the Falcons had a chance, and they got, I believe, on like the 2-yard line of the Broncos, and then just got stuffed three plays in a row and had to settle with a 24-yard field goal. But if the Falcons score that touchdown, then that's a very different game. That would have been
Makes it close.
Yeah, that would have been a 27-28 game in the fourth quarter. And so, like, the 42-20 final, it doesn't tell the whole story.
Well, and I was going to say, kind of with what you said on that, is that this is the first Boise game that I've been even remotely impressed with them so far this year, because they showed their ability to close out a game. And they were able to really close that out, put a cap on it, and I think that's something that shows them. But, at the end of the day, you have to give a lot of respect to Southwick and his ability. 27 for 29. That's actually statistically the most efficient passing game that in school history.
In nation's history.
Yeah. And that surpasses Jared Zabransky in 2006. And if you know anything about Boise State football, Jared Zabransky is a legend over there.
He's a god.
Oh, yeah.
With everything he did with the Oklahoma, everything about that. And so to be able to surpass a player like that puts some sense of notoriety. And if you're anywhere remotely connected to Boise State football, that no one's been put under the wire, much like Joe Southwick has, coming out of the Kellen Moore era. And so for him to get something like that, it's a nice cush to kind of give him. And you have to give props.
Well, and here's the thing: is it's no longer. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. It's no longer Joe Southwick. It's Joe Stashwick.
Yeah, I have caught that. He's sporting a pretty good one.
He is, and guess what? When he is wearing a mustache, he's undefeated as a quarterback. So I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if it's going to catch on as a fashion statement, but I would not be surprised to see a ton of Boise State fans wearing the stash.
Absolutely. And I just want to say really quick, we've been talking about some running backs that stepped up. You can't talk about this game and not talk about 4 touchdowns from Jay.
Yeah,
awesome job.
Jay, he had a really good game. He did have that one fumble that they lost. That was the sole turnover for the Broncos. Excuse me, no, it wasn't. It was...
There was a Southwick.
Yeah,
Southwick
there was a Southwick interception as well. But a South pick. And now we're going to do a stash pick, a southpaw. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
Football? I have no clue.
But Jay Ajayi, he did have that words are fun. He did have that one fumble, but like you said, the 4 touchdowns, 125 yards on only 17 carries. That's 7.4 yards a carry, which is impressive. I mean, not to bash on Air Force's defense at all, but I look at these numbers, including Stashwick's numbers, and kind of attribute that a little bit to the lack of production from the defense. So I think that this game was very well played. The Broncos pulled it out in the end, and really, that I don't know, put a nail in this one, I guess.
Absolutely. We talked a lot of football.
Yes,
Let's
we did.
keep talking
did.
football.
Let's keep going. Sorry,
It
I got
is-
a little hung up there.
No,
I was happy.
I feel you. And guys, as always, listeners, always follow us at MWC Rock Jocks. And if you have any fun tailgate stories, experiences from the atmosphere of some Mountain West games you go to, man, we would love to hear some of your stories. We may just feature them on the show, so feel free to send those our way. But it's time we ask the age-old question. Preston, who do you have at the peak?
I have, and we've already talked about him, Caleb Herring. I mean, he single-handedly resurrected a UNLV football team that was dead against Central Michigan. He took this team in his hands and he said, we are going to win this game because I'm going to throw a lot of really good passes and Devontae Davis is going to catch them. So I think that's got to be, for me, the number one guy who's at the peak.
I've got 2 honorable mentions, and then I'm going to put a guy straight at the peak. The 2 honorable mentions are running backs. I really was impressed with J.J.'s performance. I think it was really good to see him really break out. And I think his success is conducive with the success of the Broncos. Over at Utah State, Joey DiMartino, if you haven't heard of him, check him out. Great bruiser back, scored, I believe it was it three touchdowns this past week against Weber State. But I honestly think the big thing that he did is he established that is a legitimate 2-back threat at a Utah State, and that's a force to not be reckoned with. But I'm staying with Utah State for my man at the peak, and I got to go with linebacker Kyler Fackrell because I want you to find me another linebacker in the conference who caught a fade pass for a touchdown. In the country to catch a fade pass for a touchdown with a freaking hand in his face.
Yeah, it was an impressive catch.
Fantastic play. And I mean, if you know Kyler Fackrell, he's a behemoth of an athlete. Great defenseman for Utah State University, but very impressed with that play. I was actually standing next to, for front row listeners, I was standing next to Lance Rasmussen, front row host during that. And if you've listened to any episodes, he actually called that during this game. He said Kyler Fackrell will make a fade catch for a touchdown, and he was going bonkers. So when that happened, so shout out to the football prophet Lance Rasmussen for making that call. But that was a great play and impressive move. Just shows you the type of athleticism we have in this conference. But I'm gonna stick with Fackrell at the peak.
All right, Kyle, who do you have at the peak this week?
You know what? I've got a tandem. I've got a
Ooh.
1-2 punch.
Cute.
And the thing is that they go hand in hand together. We already talked about Joe Southwick and his performance, but he does not do that performance without wide receiver Matt Miller.
I feel you there. Yeah.
Now, Matt Miller. I'm not kidding you. When I was at this game, it seemed like every big play, every third down that they needed to get a few yards and get that first down, it just seemed like the announcer kept saying, and Miller comes up with another catch. You know, it was just ridiculous. The guy was all over the field. He ended up having, let me pull it up here. He had 10 receptions. Now, granted, there was one other receiver that they had that had 8 receptions, but he had 10 receptions for 112 yards, averaging 11.2 yards every catch. He didn't have a touchdown, but the thing is that if you watch the game, he could have easily been the player of the game. J.J. got the touchdowns. Joe Stashwick, threw for 1. But Matt Miller was the reason the Bronco offense continued on their drive just a handful of times. So I think Matt Miller to go along with Joe Stashwick's performance out there. I think that 1-2 punch right there, that duo, that's got to be my at the peak.
You know what? That's a great couple of picks, and I gotta say, our best teams in this conference are very conducive with teams that have a great connection just a good 1-2 or 1-2-3-4 punch with quarterback and some skilled receivers. You go conference to conference, which brings me to my next question. This is the discussion point that I really, really feel like hitting is we've seen some good examples of some solid teams in this conference absolutely leveling some less than stellar teams around the nation. And we've been able to just showcase what some of these offenses can do. And it's if you guys remember the 2000 to 2003 era St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf, that was like the Marshall Faulk, Kurt Warner, Torrey Holt era. That was an example of one of those explosive offenses. And I feel like we have such amazing offenses that make me think of moments like that. I want to talk to you guys. Having gone 3 games into the season, seen some of these teams put some huge beatdowns, showcase their talents and their abilities, who is the most explosive offense in this conference?
I have a hard time picking this one. Obviously, we've only gotten 3 weeks under our belt. I think that the offense that can score the most, the fastest. Oh man. See, it's just so hard because we know that Fresno State can score. They scored 52 against Rutgers. They scored 41 against Cal Poly, but they pulled out their starters at the end of the first half and essentially didn't score anymore. Then there's Utah State. I mean, they put up 70 points this past week. Wyoming is kind of in that discussion. They did put up 42 points against Idaho. But, as far as a solid beatdown goes, just absolutely killing somebody, Utah State just slaughtered Weber State. And if we were to put Weber State against the other teams, I'm sure that it would be a similar experience, but it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different story when you put these explosive offenses maybe against a solid defense. But, I mean, if you just put them up against, like, the Hickory High football team, like a bunch of 120-pounders, I think talent per talent, it makes sense over Utah State. In fact, I'll even put Utah State up against a good defense. The University of Utah has a very solid defense. They have 2 extremely impressive defensive linemen with Nate Orchard and Trevor Riley. And what Chucky Keaton alone was able to do with those defensive line for most of that game was impressive, on top of the fact that he has an extremely long line of explosive running backs, some very skilled receivers, and if you know anything about Utah State football, wide receivers was the number 1 question coming into their season. Nobody is questioning that team now. I think that that's huge. I just don't think we've seen yet what David Fales and Noel Grigsby are made of yet.
I agree.
I honestly think they have just the most lethal. I just think they have what it takes to be an extremely explosive team, can put a lot of points up, and I just don't think they've gotten to the point where they did that yet. I think that they put in a different strategy coming into the Stanford game, and they're still revamping from that. But I just expect so much more offensively out of them. So right now, I'm kind of with you. I think I'm kind of with Utah State. Just seeing the points that they put up on Weber State last year, it feels like it at this point, was so many points ago. But I really feel like at the end of the day, as far as just raw talent from some of their players, I feel like SJSU has such an explosive threat.
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick this one. I'm actually just gonna say it's a 2-2 tie for me with Utah State and Fresno State. Devontae Adams, not Davis, Devontae Adams at Fresno State, and Derek Carr. Those 2 brothers, Derek Carr, are fantastic as well. So it's hard to say who's the most explosive. I think that we will definitely revisit this discussion later on in the season because it is a very interesting one for sure.
Can I just throw something out?
No.
You guys, you said explosive, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Run
Points
with
in
it,
a
John
hurry.
Raphael.
Points in a hurry, right? That's what I think of when I think of explosive. And I think you have to have a good passing game to be an explosive offense, whether it's running a 2-minute drill to win at the end of the game or whether it's jumping up 21 points in the first quarter, just bam, bam, bam. Passing is where that happens because it doesn't take a lot of time off the clock. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that Fresno State, is at the top of that discussion, and I understand Utah State has their place there too, but Wyoming, and we mentioned them a little bit, but Wyoming is, I think, deserves every bit the respect that those other 2 offenses are getting.
Right now, and anyone can question me on this, but I don't think I'm wrong. The best just 1-2 punch for me, quarterback to wide receiver, in my opinion, for skill, for yards, for scores, scoring late, scoring quick, in my opinion, is Brett Smith to Robert Huron. Okay. I think that is the most threatening 1-2 punch we have in the conference.
I think.
Yeah. You can even throw it over. Yeah, absolutely.
Because those 2 guys are fantastic. And you look at these 3 teams that we've just mentioned, and we've got to get past this discussion, but Utah State, Fresno State, and Wyoming are all in the top 20 in passing yards in the nation. Fresno State is at 14, Utah State is at 15, and Wyoming is ranked 19th for passing yards. So, like you said, Kyle, the way that you put up points really fast is through the air, and these three teams can really air it out.
Wyoming's right there. I told you.
Absolutely. And speaking of putting up some points fast, it's time to speed through some of our expectations for the week. Preston, let's run the hurry up.
All right, we start out with Boise State at Fresno State. We'll talk a little bit more about that one.
San Jose State heads up north to play Minnesota.
Utah State goes down south to play USC.
CSU comes in against a very evenly matched. What am I kidding? They're playing Alabama.
Yeah. Oregon State is going to visit the Aztecs, or the Wampus Cats of San Diego State.
It's Paradise in Hawaii, and it's Nevada over in Reno. Hawaii plays on the Pac.
Western Illinois looks to bolster UNLV's confidence a little bit more.
And Brett Smith and his boys are on a roll as the Wyoming Cowboys head to Air Force.
Well, those are the games. Let's just do predictions really quick for the non-conference and non-giant games.
So none of our Goliath alerts. Okay.
Yeah. So that really just leaves Western Illinois at UNLV.
Oh,
So-
wow. We have a lot of these.
Yeah, so UNLV is going to win. Caleb Herring, I think, will do very well, and I think that Tim Cornette and those guys keep on going. So that's my prediction.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling the rumble. Preston, is it time for Goliath alert?
It is time.
Let's do it. All right, let's check out some of our Goliath alerts. Let's start with San Jose State, Minnesota. Preston, what rocks does San Jose State have to take down the Badgers?
Gophers.
Thank
Golden
you.
Gophers, bro.
The Gophers.
Dude,
First of
everybody
all-
in Minnesota is just totally pissed at you right now.
First of all, San Jose State's wins with a much better freaking mascot than the Gophers. And I love Minneapolis. I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah. We talk about it all the time, but San Jose State has David Fales. Here's my key for them to win, is they need to protect David Fales. Minnesota has, I think, like 6 sacks on the season or so. They have been quite impressive at pressuring the quarterback. If they can keep that Golden Gopher rush off of David Fales, I think that him to Noel Grigsby is going to be a great connection. Should be a good game. I think that San Jose State pulls that one off in a close one.
Minnesota actually doing pretty well. They're 3-0 so far. I don't know what else to say about it. They're a meathead team. I don't know if you've ever heard of wrestler, UFC fighter Brock Lesnar. He's a Minnesota meathead, and that's like Brock Lesnar, Matt Burke meatheads, and that's what that Minnesota team is. They're a tough team, and they can get through offensive lines. So I absolutely agree with you. If they can maintain the line, give David Fales some time, there's a really good chance of a victory there.
And the Spartans just need to slow down that rushing attack. The Golden Gophers are 23rd in the nation for rushing yards a game at 258. So if they're able to slow them down, get the ball in the hands of David Fales, they should be able to take down the meathead Gophers of Minnesota.
All right, so let's move on forward. San Diego State hosting Oregon State. What rocks does San Diego State potentially have against the Beavers?
I believe that Adam Wayma should be healthy for this game. They did have the bye week after the shellacking that they took from Ohio State. So Adam Wayma is coming in. They do have Kaler? Yeah, Kaler, the quarterback who took over for Adam Dingwell. I think that he has some promise, and they should be able to move the ball a little bit better than they were able to against Ohio State. I know that we were talking bad things about the Wampus Cats, but my hope is never ending for Mountain West Conference teams. So I hope a lot for this game.
Gosh, you got to hope Adam Wayma just comes through and plays huge.
Yep.
He is such a talent, and it's hard to see what the Aztecs are doing right now. I just think he could breathe some life into that, so we'll see how it goes.
Jake Feely.
Oh, please. Oh, gosh.
Just
The hair.
do things. Just do things.
Absolutely. So let's move on. Colorado State racing the Alabama Crimson Tide down Cherry Hill.
down to one time.
Little Giants.
One time. Little Giants, baby.
I am in the firm believer. I mean, Colorado State, I don't mean to knock on you. You know what I do mean to knock on you? You're playing freaking Alabama.
You barely
It's not so
pulled
much
off.
a knock on Colorado State. It's
just
Alabama.
big on Alabama.
Yeah.
They could beat the Detroit Lions at this point. I mean,
No, I don't know. The Lions are actually doing pretty good.
no, what's a bad
Jacksonville.
football? Well, let's see.
Jaguars.
The Browns just got rid of Trent Richardson, so there you go. They lost a Tideman, so yeah, there you go.
Well, I
Beat
think
Browns.
this game can be just summed up in Alabama's second and third strings are better than the Rams, and I'm sorry. Like, I love the Rams. They played well this week against Cal Poly. So
Absolutely.
they blocked 2 of their field goals. That was pretty cool.
Okay,
Shaq Barrett did well.
Colorado State fans, for all you listening, I'll go ahead and give you an incentive. If you can manage to pull off this victory, I will make a trip in the next month to Fort Collins, and any dare you send me on Twitter, I'll do it. Main Street in Fort Collins, I'll do it.
And I'll be along to video blog
So
that.
he'll video that and we'll put it up on the website. And again, you don't want to knock Colorado State, but
Rough game.
it's Alabama. That's kind of a cleanup opportunity on that one. But like we said, just one time. Annexation of Puerto Rico.
Annexation of Puerto.
Everyone go home and
Icebox.
watch. Everyone go home and watch Little Giants.
Find the burliest girl in
That's good.
What is?
Tuscaloosa,
No, not in Tuscaloosa.
Fort Collins.
Fort Collins, and just put her on the team and call her Icebox, and we'll be
That's all
good.
it takes.
Yeah. All right.
All it takes. Now, here's the game I'm most excited to talk about, not just because of homerisms, because I legitimately think this is going to be an absolutely great matchup. Utah State heads to the Coliseum in Los Angeles to play on Student Body Right and the USC Trojans.
Well,
How do we feel?
Of course, you are excited about this, Steve. You grew up in LA. You're
Yeah.
an LA guy. You were a USC fan. Well, still are a USC fan.
I'm still a pretty strong
recovering.
Trojan fan.
Yeah.
I'm still a pretty strong Trojan fan. I'm very much on the Fire Lane Kiffin bandwagon.
Yeah.
I can't stand the guy.
Well,
How do you-
nobody can.
How do you go from freaking Pete Carroll to Groucho Marx is my freaking question. I
Yeah.
can't stand this guy. But I mean, this honestly to me can be a very, very interesting matchup. But before I go on, I want to hear your take on this. Where do you see Utah State's chances? What rocks do they have?
What rocks do they have? I think they have a very good defensive front seven, which is really, if they can shut down the run that the Trojans have, they have a really good running back in Madden. He's a phenomenal back. He can take it to the house whenever he really wants. He's very fast. And obviously they have Marquise Lee, but their big question mark is at quarterback. Obviously they did have a little bit of a revelation this past game against Boston College. They did get some good throws. Their offense was doing pretty well, but Boston College, their defense is like 109th in the nation, or like 108th or something like that. So it's not like that's the toughest defense they're going to face. And honestly, their defense is really high in the statistics, but they have not faced an offense like Utah State's. Chucky Keaton is the master of the universe. I said that last week. He is. He's amazing. He can get out of pressure. He'll slip tackles. He'll run for 20 yards at a time. He'll pass down the middle to one of those great wide receivers. I think that USC's defense is not going to be prepared, and I think that Utah State's defensive line can really put some pressure on those Trojans.
The one interesting thing about USC on this is I think I like Trey Madden as a player. I just don't think that the rushing attack at USC is enough to tire down the front seven at USC. They're
Utah
long. Thank you. They're so alike.
Bunch of U's
and I'm
and
just
S's.
I'm on just one Pepsi today, and I'm sorry, but I mean Trey Madden I'm impressed with, but I mean USC's long rush this year is 39 yards. They've only scored 5 rushing touchdowns, and one of those was Cody Kessler. So they have 4 true rushing touchdowns. To me that's USC traditionally is you build a foundation with the running game and you open options passing it. I don't think that this is that student body right traditional type of a game. I don't know that Cody Kessler is the type of a quarterback who can run this. I think if any time is there for USU to take down a big team, it's really the matchup's perfect here. For me, it comes down to this, and I say this with so many teams, but this is huge. USC needs to get Trey Madden to turn the ball over. These are players that can put together some monster.
USU.
USU
You said
needs
it
to
again.
Am I
get
doing
your
it
med.
again?
Yeah.
Okay. The Aggies.
There we
They're
go.
fun, but they're also hard.
Sorry, listeners. Sorry, listeners. The Aggies, they are extremely hard-hitting guys. They can stop the ball. I need to see a couple of turnovers out of Trey Madden. I think that's what's important. But at the end of the day, my opinion, this is Chucky's time to shine. Chucky Keaton is one of those special players that if you put him on this type of a stage on ABC, I think this is a really special opportunity for him. And at the end of the day, you can talk all day about USU's offense, but it's really going to come down to his ability to play and play big.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great game. We're excited to see the Chucky for Heisman campaign really take off after the Aggies put up some great numbers.
Honestly, this is RG3 in my opinion beating, was it Oklahoma, the big win that he had against Oklahoma? This is Johnny Manziel beating Alabama. To me, this could be that type of a game. I'm not saying he wins the Heisman Trophy, but he makes a name for himself.
Yep.
And I think it is extremely possible. That's always in Southern California. That's an extremely threatening defense, always. But I think the matchup is there. And I know that we've made a lot of big, bold predictions as far as how some of our teams are going to do against bigger teams. But I think that there is so much potential with this. I think USC has exposed so many of their weaknesses, especially against Wazoo. I just think that all of the key points are there. I think this is going to be a close game, but I really think that there's potential.
I think the Aggies win that one. All right, now let's get to the game of the week, shall we?
Game of the week.
Well,
That
that was
was
nice.
me making up a soundbite. Is what that was.
That was an off the cuff soundbite right there.
We
what I-
might we
it's what I
might just
did.
have to throw that onto every single one of our
We
podcasts.
throw an echo effect on there, some lightning bolts.
Yeah, Trevor, our sound engineer, is just nodding his head. Oh yeah, he's got this.
Copyright.
All right. Well, it's hard not to pick this one. Boise State traveling to Fresno to take on the Bulldogs. This is going to be a fantastic
This
game.
is going to be so much fun, and I just expect it to be. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that I don't even know how to break down this game. It's going to be a good game. That's what I'm going to say. It's going to be a fantastic game.
I'm excited. Here's the big thing that I love, and I love a good, fun Old West matchup. And you know, it's very. I'm just throwing together wrestling references all over the place. It's Hogan Andre the Giant from WrestleMania 3 in Detroit, right? DeMarcus Lawrence, Derek Carr is that matchup, and it's. I think DeMarcus Lawrence has had this day circled to go. This is the day I get on the map. This is the day that I flatten Derek Carr, and I think Lawrence has played extremely well. And this is just going to be a fun game of matchups. I think these teams match up so well. This could be a very gunslinger type of a game, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Matt Miller versus Darren Smith.
Oh man!
You know, this is going to be.
Oh man! I didn't even think of that.
It's going to be a good. It's going to be a very good game. Devontae Adams versus Darian Thompson. So I think that these teams are evenly matched. There's going to be a lot of great plays. Everyone should be tuning in. It's on Friday night, prime time, ESPN. If you're not watching this game, I am questioning your sanity.
This is a potential. We can't say these teams won't find each other again in the conference title
Yeah,
game.
this could be a very legitimate preview for the conference title game because these two teams were picked to win their respective divisions before this season even started, and I don't see why not. Obviously, there's some good teams in both of those divisions that could challenge those two, but for right now, these are the two favorites, and there's really no reason to think otherwise. My big question is if Fresno State's defense, which we have been talking about all day long, all of these past weeks, as being very underwhelming, can they stop Jay Ajayi? Can they stop the Stashwick? Can they stop him? You know, if
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
able to have a game like he did against Air Force, I just don't see how they're going to be able to win this game. Even though it is in Fresno and the what do they call those guys? The Red Wave. The Red Wave. Yes, that is the the crowd in Fresno is referred to as the Red Wave. I know that they're going to come out in force for this game, but the Broncos, in my opinion, are the favorites to win this one.
Absolutely, and I think this is an opportunity. I mean, I think we haven't seen as much out of Darren Smith as I think we could, and I think that could be a fun matchup with him against a guy like Matt Miller. And I honestly think that he's going to play up to that opportunity. I am picking Fresno for this solely because they're playing in Fresno. I just think that's what kind of puts things over. I think that they have an opportunity to give some momentum to their defense with that crowd. You've got to think that their crowd's going to be coming in huge with Boise coming to town. And I think that they're going to give that time. There's something about a good home crowd that can motivate a defense.
Yeah, they're going to be rocking the all red for this game. It's going to be just crazy.
I think it's going to be fantastic, and I think Darren Smith has what he needs to slow down a guy like Matt Miller, possibly quiet down Joe Southwick, give him one less solid target. I think that they have a defensive line that can slow down J.J. enough. That being said, this is going to be a close game. This is going to be a fun game, and really, this could easily determine our conference title team, and so I think we have a lot to expect. The other thing on this, too, is obviously Boise's trying to save face and still maintain credibility in the rankings to beat a team like Fresno.
Who is ranked this week.
But you play as a Fresno and you beat a Boise State team, now you're in the running for BCS credibility. And I think that a team like Boise, a win like Boise can do that. So to me, it also comes down to not only home crowd and effective matchups, but which team's playing for more? A Boise, and in your opinion, I'd love your questions, Kyle. I'd love for you to chime in on this. Who's playing for more? Boise with an opportunity to save face from that one loss and maintain enough credibility to stay in the BCS talks, or Fresno to go from kind of being in the talks to catapulting their way into the talks with a win against Boise State?
And I think that there's BCS talk here, but I think that the first and foremost things in these teams' minds is their Mountain West title dream that they want. Mm-hmm. Whoever wins this game automatically gets a buffer, if you will, against the rest of their other teams. Let's say that Fresno wins this game, as was predicted, and they go and somewhere down the line, all of a sudden UNLV comes along and just out of nowhere, UNLV comes and beats them. Okay, they have that one loss, but they had that buffer game. Now, if this is a loss to Fresno and then they lose some random game to UNLV or San Diego State or who knows what's gonna happen, that buffer game is the whole difference between them getting into the Mountain West Championship game. And the same goes for Boise on the other side with Wyoming and Utah State and several other teams challenging there.
Absolutely. Thoughts, Preston? You look like you have a thought.
I really think that Boise State is playing for more to legitimize themselves and come back and say, we are the team that we have always been. That Washington loss was a fluke. We can play big teams. We can take it on the big stage, which, I mean, Fresno is for me, it's a big stage. I think that this is going to be a great game. We can win in the prime time, and in my opinion, Boise's playing for
Now, I just have one final question. I don't want to put light on this situation, but because of the situation in Colorado, Fresno is technically sort of coming off of a bye week. What does that do to Fresno's abilities against Boise? Pretty much coming off of a week off when they were planning on playing. So they didn't really get much of a week off because they prepped themselves like they were playing a game and then ended up having to take kind of a full week off. What does that do to their chances?
We'll talk about this a little bit later. There is a question for Ask the Jocks, but I think that coming off this bye week, I don't know, it could go one of two ways. And I think, well, I'll just give the two scenarios. Either you're really rested and prepared for this game, or you're kind of just like in a weird emotional state. Like, what just happened? We went to Boulder. There was a disaster there. We never played the game. And you're still kind of back in that situation. In my opinion, I think that they're going to do a good job of transitioning to stepping up. They're going to be rested. They're going to be prepared. I think that is how the whole dynamic of this situation plays out.
Absolutely. So, sufficient job, everyone, to break that down. Final predictions. Preston, you have Boise. I have Fresno. Kyle, do you have a thought?
You know what? I feel like this game is big time a toss up. I think that it's going to come down to defense, as you can say in almost any game. But in reality, I think that both of these offenses, which is interesting to say now after Boise State's performance against Washington, but both of these offenses have some serious firepower as of the last couple weeks. And so it's going to be which team's defense gets maybe that one stop that gets their offense the extra possession to go down the field and get a score. I think that this is definitely a one-score win for either team. But if I'm going to go out on a limb here, I'm going to go Boise State.
Okay.
I think Boise State goes in expecting to win every game, and I think that their win against Air Force. And kind of coming back into things, they're going to go and take it to the Bulldogs on the road.
I like it. So we got a lot of expect. Should be a fun game tonight. But with that, let's play our favorite game, Preston.
Ask the Jocks.
Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. Does Barry Manilow know that you raid his wardrobe?
All right, only 3 questions this week, but let's just run through them. First question comes from Tim Hansen. He says, how does Fresno State not getting a makeup game for the Colorado game hurt them? That is still to be determined about a makeup game. We will see in the future whether or not they get another team on their schedule or not.
Still listed as postponed. So
yeah. We'll see if they do play Colorado. I know that Colorado was pushing for the weekend of the Mountain West Championship game, which obviously is going to have some conflicts. But if they are not able to get a makeup game, I think that this hurts them only in the sense that they will have played 11 games and not 12 for national recognition, and that's just about it. Otherwise, it hurts them financially. I know that they lost a lot of money actually going to Boulder, paying out some loyalties, and not being able to play that game. They lost quite a bit of money. But as far as just the game goes, it really only hurts them in that they will have only played 11 games this season.
Well, not just that, just the payoff of playing a Pac-12 team. That gives a big payoff, especially if they can get that win, which you could pretty well assume they were going to get against Colorado. So that's kind of something to expect there. So I think it does hurt them organizationally. I don't think it necessarily destroys any of their ranking chances other than the fact that they're one less game in. But you got to hope they can find some opportunity to get another game in to make that work. So,
second question comes from Joseph Cook, good friend of mine. Early leading candidates for League O MVP and D MVP. And these are good questions.
A great question.
Okay.
So I know your guy.
I'm going to be honest here. You look at the numbers, you look at effectiveness, you look at balance, you look at how their playing is conducive to their team's success. How is the offensive player of the year not Chucky Keaton, in my opinion? Strong in passing, strong in rushing, balanced attack, and if you watch any of his games, his team's success is conducive with his ability to play. In my opinion, it just shows that he is, in my opinion, far and above our choice for offensive player of the year.
I think that I got to chime in on this offensive player of the year as well. I know you guys talked about several of these players. We've talked about Carr and Fales and even Smith, but I think that we have to see. I don't think that those three. I guess Smith kind of came on the radar with the Nebraska game, and now we need to see a little bit more. If he comes away with a win against Boise, it could catapult him. But I think that when you look at who's done what so far against what competition, you do have to kind of go back to what Chucky Keaton has done with his team and where they're at, and I think after Saturday's games, we'd be able to answer this game a whole lot better.
Absolutely.
because of the Fresno State Boise State matchup, because of the Utah State USC matchup. I think those three teams right now have the only legitimate offensive MVP, because the offensive MVP, let's be honest, it's going to come from one of the top 2 to 3 teams in the conference, and I think that those 3 teams right now are playing like the top 2 or 3 teams in the conference, and so it's got to come from one of those 3. If I have to pick one, I think that Chucky Keaton with possibly Derek Carr. Is it Derek or David? Sorry, Derek. Now you got me messed up with the comment earlier.
Damn brothers.
So, but Keaton and Carr are kind of my two there, with maybe Chucky getting the slight lead there just because of his dominance that way.
I will go with Chucky Keaton right now. My dark horse, and this was I was waiting for a big reveal talking to Steve earlier, Caleb Herring. If he can turn this team around.
Okay.
All right.
And
okay.
If
Steve and I just sat up in our chairs a little higher.
Okay.
I don't want to jump the gun here, but I am a little bit. If he can do this week in and week out and really turn this program around, I'm not saying that he's going to win the Offensive Player of the Year. But if he can do what he did, then good things will happen for that team. So I think we're all unanimous. Chucky Keaton gets our offensive so far. Now,
as of this week.
Yeah, as of this week. We're 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
Defensive player, it's a little bit harder because not too many guys have really stood out. DeMarcus Lawrence is still my front runner. I just have to say he's a beast. You can't count him out on what he's going to do. But my dark horse is Eddie Yarbrough out of Wyoming. He had a monster game against Idaho, and he played very well again against Northern Colorado. But I think that if he is able to maintain a high level of play and get those tackles for loss, as well as just stuffing those offensive players, he's my dark horse for defensive player.
I really gotta. It's kind of difficult because it's like we said. I feel like by the end of the year it's going to be DeMarcus Lawrence, only because I think he's not going to do enough to lose that. I think he's held his own pretty well. But if you look after they play Utah State on October 12th, all the other games, Nevada, BYU, Colorado State, Wyoming, San Diego State, New Mexico, he could put together double-digit tackles all of those games, honestly. And I think it's very possible, especially if you look at like Nevada and their attack, BYU and a player like Taysom Hill who's going to run all those draws up the middle, who's going to be there to make those stops. To me, it's just numbers. He's going to pile up those numbers, and if Boise has a team to show off, you show them those numbers, you show them their effectiveness, and it goes to there. I like Eddie Yarbrough as a pick. I think if you go to all of the linebackers out of Utah State, guys like Kyler Fackrell, guys like Vigil, I'd especially myself go with just Fackrell and his overall effectiveness as possible. We still yet to see what Darren Smith can do. I just don't see, no one has explosively told me, you're the guy. I think DeMarcus Lawrence has done enough to maintain his spot.
Agreed, and I think that right now it's kind of heavy on linebackers. There's not anybody in the conference that's just totally wiping the floor with everybody with picks.
Yeah.
But you never know. There could be someone that gets one or two picks for the next.
Ben Wickery out of
Ben Wickery. I'd love to see him put together some strong stops.
If he gets a lot of interceptions, he's going to take it. But right now we'll see where he goes. He only has one on the season.
And the question was for right now, and so I think he's the obvious pick.
Yeah.
All right, last question. We'll just go really quickly. Comes from Ogden Aggie. When the Mountain West Conference preseason is done, which team will have recorded the biggest non-conference win? Utah State.
Absolutely.
Against USC.
Absolutely.
That's got to be the decision. Since we've already lost to Ohio State and Washington, there's really no other games.
Please don't let our biggest conference win be Fresno over Rutgers.
That's what I was just about to say.
It's got to be this game, because if not, that's the one. And so I think we need to prove that, and I think that's possible, and I think it can happen. I'd love to see it.
All right. Well, that wraps up the Ask the Jocks. Let's ask the question, what did we learn today? And let's start with our special guest.
Kyle, what did we learn?
You know what? I learned that you guys put on a fantastic show. Let me just put that out there. No, I think the
I'll send you the 100 in the mail for that, by the way.
Yeah, no problem. Just get it to me tomorrow. Put a rush fee on that. No, I think the thing that I learned was just the fact that this conference is still wide open. I think that talking about UNLV today, and their performance last week, you never know. That is a team that could, whether they come and beat someone in the Mountain Division or in the West Division, they could be this crazy team that goes and knocks down the number one team and lets someone else slip into the number one spot. And I just think that you can't sleep in the Mountain West right now. I don't think anybody has
Absolutely.
established themselves as a completely dominant team that is just going to go run the table. Everybody needs to watch out for every team in this conference.
So, Levitt, Preston, what did we learn?
I learned that, I really learned that Nevada's third-string quarterback and third-string running back have a really hard time against Florida State, which we didn't even talk about.
Blew me away.
Yeah, well, it was hard to see. I mean, just with Fajardo going down and just all these injuries. I'm sorry, Wolfpack. I have learned that this, a lot like what Kyle said, this conference is wide open. I am just so excited for conference play to start.
Oh, yeah.
So that we can finally get to see how the divisions really play out. Obviously, we've had a few, appetizers for the conference play, but once we get into that real meat of teams playing each other, it's going to be one heck of a year.
Absolutely. And what I learned, to bring it back full circle after hearing Fresno's involvement with support out in Boulder, I've just got to say this phrase: football is a family. And we can talk games, we can talk rivalries, we can talk stats. But let's not forget how the love of this game and the love of sports brings us together as people. And what a great opportunity that we have. And I don't mean to make this mushy to end, football hits, kills, death, all that stuff. But I absolutely am so impressed with Fresno's ability, the big hearts that they have. That's such a cool thing. Let's not forget how much we love the sport, how much we love those around us, and let's have a fun weekend.
Let's do it. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Rock Jocks from the Front Row Network. We've been your hosts, and we had a good time. I'm Preston Croshaw.
I'm Kyle Haywood.
I'm Steve Schwartzman.
Join the climb.